Welcome to the Airline Booking System using React, .NET 6, and Auth 0. This is Professor Manish Airline Booking System using React, .NET 6. In this course, and Auth we're going to build an airline booking system Professor Manish using Narayan technologies with Innovative React. Institution. And then the backend server, we're going to build an API layer system using .NET 6, front-end technologies with and then React. What we'll do is we'll finally secure server our API layer using .NET with 6 the login logout mechanism. And then what we'll do is our API secure some of our actions front-end applications using the login logout mechanism, as well as our API will build secure site very similar to Expedia routes. Again, we're going to expand on it. The basic functionality will allow build a user site very similar to Expedia. Again, we're going to expand on it. The basic functionality will allow a user. Right, I'm going to head over to search flights. You can, and then I'm going to pick a date. I'm leaving from JFK search airport. Right, I'm going to head over to LAX, and then I'm going to pick a date. Los Angeles, and hit say search. And then what happens is we get a list, right? A list of flights Los Angeles that are available for us to book. And we'll say search. And then what happens is we get a list, right? Usually you have a button available for us to book, or you can click on the flight here. And once you get the list of flights or book, usually we're going to add that basic functionality, and then we'll expand on the flight here, and then with further bonus lectures. So we're going to add that basic functionality, and then we'll expand on more microservices such as payments with further bonus emails and so on. We'll try to build out. Hope you have fun. More components. Let's get started. More microservices such as payments. I'll go through the architecture, emails, and so on. We'll start to develop. So hope you have fun. Let's get started. In the next lecture, I'll go through the architecture, and we'll start to develop. Welcome to the course, and good luck. Welcome to the architecture part of the course. So what I did was I created a image for you guys that shows our basic architecture for the airline booking system using React, .NET 6, and Auth 0. Again, I'll provide this in the resource contents of the course for this lecture. All right, so getting started, we're going to create an airline booking system. So we have a front-end React application, all right, and then our back-end we have an API, or think of it as a microservice, think of it as a booking microservice, using .NET 6, right? And then the front end is going to have some basic functionality, such as login and logout. So we're going to use Auth 0 as our identity provider or our authentication and authorization platform. It's easy to get started with Auth 0, and I'll show you how that works. So for logging in and logging out, we're going to go through Auth 0 and then come back to our React application. Now, our .NET 6 Web API is going to have one controller. It's going to be called the booking controller, and then we'll have two endpoints. One is to search for flights. All right. Now, on the React side, anyone can search for flights. They don't have to be authenticated. They don't have to log in or log out in order to search for flights. Just like on Expedia, anyone can search flights without having to register or log in. So we're going to allow users to search flights using the booking search endpoint in our .NET 6 Web API. That's going to be a getter, a get call. All right. And we're going to have another endpoint in our Web API that's going to be a post endpoint. So on the booking controller, we're going to have a book endpoint or book action. Okay. So now the book action, we don't want anyone as a public user to go in and book. We're going to make sure that in order to book a flight, once you search for flights, you're going to have to be authenticated or logged in using Auth 0 on our front-end React application. All right, so we're going to have two kind of forms or pages. You can think of it as two components. One is to search flights, okay, and one is to book a flight after you get a list of flights back. All right, and in order to book a flight, you have to be authenticated. So the book flight uses an access token in order to call the API to book the flight. Okay. Again, the access token is going to be provided by Auth 0, as we're going to secure our .NET 6 Web API using Auth 0. And then in order to book the flight, we're going to have another restriction on the front end where you have to be logged in order to book the flight. Now, when you log in through Auth0, if you haven't registered Auth0, it's going to take you to register page. You can also have external provider registration using, for example, your Google or Gmail, Microsoft account, and so on, Facebook account, and so on, in order to register or sign up with Auth0. Once you sign up, you're going to come back to our React airline booking system, and you should be able to book flights once you search for the flights. All right, so let's get started. In the next lecture or next section, we're going to cover the API side of things. All right, we'll build our API using a clean architecture, separation of concerns. We're going to have a API layer, server application layer. We'll have models. We're going to have a dependency injection container. So we'll set that up, very basic. Again, you can use all this in your real world projects at work or your school project. Again, this is a basic airline booking system. Again, we can expand on it, make it more advanced, more complex. Let's get you started. In the next set or next section, we'll go ahead and build our .NET 6 Web API. All right, welcome to the next section of the airline booking system. So we're going to use, in this course, Visual Studio 2022 in order to develop our .NET 6 Web API and our entire solution for the clean architecture stack. So I did provide links to Visual Studio download page. Again, feel free to use any IDE you feel is comfortable, such as Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio or any other IDE that you're used to. Okay. In this course, again, we're going to use Visual Studio 2022. All right. So now, when I open up Visual Studio 2022, I'm going to create a new project. All right. So I'm going to click on Create New Project. All right. And here, I'm going to create a blank solution. So choose Blank Solution. Hit Next. And let's give it a name. All right. So we're going to call this our airline system. Okay. So airline system. And I go ahead and again, you can choose the location. I usually have it in my home office source repos. Okay, you could have a folder such as C drive development or dev. I'm going to choose again solution name airline system. Hit create. All right, so we have a blank solution here. In order to follow a clean architecture solution folder structure and project structure, I'm going to walk you through that now. So what we're going to do is create multiple projects here. Again, just default projects, and then we'll go and address each one in the next set of videos. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a new project. We're going to add a class library to take care of our domain layer. So I'm going to choose class library, hit next. Let's give it a name here. So let's follow a pattern. So I'm going to use the same name as my solution, airline system, and then dot, and we'll call it domain. Okay, domain. And again, feel free to use, any framework that suits your need. For right now, I'm going to use the latest .NET 6, which has long-term support LTS. All right, so that's the framework I'll be using here. Click on Create. All right, once that's done, it's going to create a default class. You can go ahead and right-click and delete that class. That's fine. All right, so we have one project here, which is a class library for our domain layer. Okay. Next up, I'm going to create an application layer. So I'll right-click the solution again, add new project. Again, a class library here. Next, and I'm going to again name this airline system, and then dot application layer. So this is going to hold on to our interfaces, our services. All right. Again, you could call it a services layer. That's fine. I'm going to call it application layer. Click on next. Again, use the .NET 6 framework. All right, perfect. It's going to create a default class. I'm going to go ahead and right-click that, delete it. All right, so we have two projects, our domain layer, then our application layer, which is going to depend on our domain layer, right? And then we're going to create an IOC layer, or our inversion of control or our dependency container layer. Okay, so I'm going to right-click the solution, click on Add New Project. Again, it's going to be a class library. I hit Next. I'm going to name it Airline System .ioc. Okay, feel free to name it, dependency container, or if you want to spell out inversion of control, that's fine. I'm going to name it IOC. Click on Next. .NET 6 as a framework. Click on Create. All right, it will default to a class 1. I'll go ahead and, again, delete the default classes. All right, and then finally, I'm going to have an API layer. All right, so I'm going to right-click the solution, Add New Project. Okay, this time I'm going to choose ASP.NET Core Web API. All right, make sure if you're used to C#, that's fine. This course is going to use C# as the default language. Feel free to use any other language you like, F# or Visual Basic, VB.NET, and so on. I'm going to choose ASP.NET Core Web API C#. Click on Next. And let's go ahead and name this Airline System.API. So this is going to be our API layer. Click on Next. All right, now I'm going to, for right now, turn off the configure for HTTPS. All right. We're not going to enable Docker for this course. Might at a later point. Okay. I'll enable the Open API support, so you'll see the default Swagger page once we launch the API. Okay. So again, .NET 6 is a framework. For right now, we're not going to use any authentication. I'll show you how to configure Auth0 in order to integrate the authentication and authorization for the airline system. So once you have everything set up for your web API, click on Create. All right, perfect. So we have our API layer. All right, that's going to have a dependency on our application layer. Our application layer will depend on our domain, which contains our domain entities, such as flight, booking, ticket, passenger, baggage, and so on. Our application might have services such as booking service, email service, payment service, and so on. Our IOC will be a dependency container which sets up the service dependencies such that we can inject them into our API or any other application that's going to be using our services. All right, then finally we have our API layer. That's the topmost layer in this case. It's going to have a bunch of controllers in there, some program default pipelines, all right, where we can configure our services, build our container. And again, we'll tackle each of these layers in the next set of courses or videos, sorry. So hope you're able to set up this solution. Again, clean architecture, separation of concerns. This is normally how I start my project structure, whether I'm at work or on some sort of seminar. It's nice to have. It's very quick and easy. It allows different teams to develop different parts of the application. So feel free to follow this if you like another approach or another architecture style. Feel free to incorporate it into this course. So I'll see you in the next video, and we'll set up our domain entities and then move on. Thank you. All right, so next we're going to attack our airline system domain layer. So what I'm going to do is right-click the airline system domain project, add a new folder, and we're going to create a models folder so we can store all of our models here. So I'll type in models. All right, the first class I'm going to add, so I'm going to right-click the models folder, add a class, and this class is going to be our flight model. Okay, so we'll say flight, and you can choose class at the top or by default say flight. All right, perfect. So I'm going to make this a public class, flight. Okay, let's go ahead and define our flight. All right, so again, feel free to add your own attributes or expand on the ones I'm creating here. So I'm going to create a public string flight number. Okay, and notice that Visual Studio 2022 it auto-completes some of the code for you, which is nice. Saves some time. Okay, here I'm going to create next attribute public string departure airport. So where we're departing from. Okay, and next we're going to have a public string destination airport. Okay, and after that, we're going to have a departure time and arrival time. So public, this time it's a date time format or data type. So departure time, and then we're going to have another date time. So date time, arrival time. All right. Then let me scroll down here. All right. So after our departure time, arrival time, a flight can have a capacity, like meaning how many seats are maximum on that flight. So we'll have a public int capacity. All right. A flight can also have how many remaining seats there are. So public int remaining seats on the flight. Okay. And then after that, we'll have a ticket price. Okay. So public for that flight, decimal ticket price. Okay. And finally, a flight will contain a collection of tickets. Okay. Or a list of tickets. So we can say public list and say ticket. Okay. We haven't created the ticket model yet. We'll go ahead and do that in a second. But we can at least define the property within the flight class. So we'll have this attribute called tickets and getter setter. Okay, great. So this are so far attributes here. Next, what I'll do is define the constructor. For the time being, I'll go ahead and highlight the ticket class. Notice it throws an error because we haven't defined a model yet for it. We can actually generate a new class here. So generate class ticket in models. So you'll notice on the right side here, we'll have a ticket class here set up, which is nice. Just an empty ticket class. We'll go ahead and define that in a second. So now I'm going to have a public constructor for the flight class. So public flight, right? It's going to take in a string of flight number, string departure airport, okay, string destination airport, a date time of departure time, a date time of arrival time, and an initial capacity when we go ahead and set up a new flight. So we'll have a capacity. And then finally, we'll have a decimal for the ticket price of that flight. Okay? And we'll go ahead and define or assign these values, incoming constructor values, to the local properties. All right. So we'll say flight number equals, oh, we need a capital here. So flight number equals flight number. Notice it auto-completes it for me. We'll have departure airport equals departure airport. Nice. Destination airport. Again, see, notice how Visual Studio 2022 starts to auto-complete some of these properties, which is nice. I can just keep hitting tab here. Arrival time, nice. I hit enter. Capacity, remaining seats. So here we're going to do remaining seats. Okay. And if I hit space, it should pick up equal to and remaining seats here. Oh, I'm sorry. I did have remaining seats. Oh yeah, it's capacity. Capacity. Okay, that's initial. So when we set up a new flight, brand new flight, the capacity is going to be, let's say, 100 seats, and the remaining seats are going to be the initial capacity, which is also 100. Right? Nobody's booked anything on this flight yet. Nice. And then we're going to have a ticket price, okay, equals the ticket price. And then finally, tickets is going to be a new collection or new list of ticket. Okay, so I'll tab out of that. It should define my constructor for the flight. Okay, great. All right, let's create some methods now. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a public public void get flight details. Okay, so I need a method that's going to show me my flight details. So I can say console dot right line, and here I'm going to say $ flight, and then placeholder here is flight number. Great. Okay, and we can put colon. All right. And then next, we'll go ahead and do. Oh, sorry, I wanted to do a colon here. All right, so that's a flight number, and then we'll say console.WriteLine, and here we're going to say $from. So this is a departing airport. So departure airport. Oops, let me put a $ first, and we'll say from departure airport, and then to, and it's going to be destination airport. Nice. All right, so that'll print out on the console. Okay. Again, you can log this information as well, and I'll show you how to do that. All right. Next, we're going to say console.WriteLine and tab out of that, so it'll auto-complete it for me, which is nice. And we'll say departure time is going to be our departure time. Oops. Sorry, my mouse. Departure time. Go ahead and choose that property. Okay. And sorry about that. Departure time. And then we'll put comma here, and we'll say arrival time is equal to our arrival time. There we go. All right, and then we close that bracket, close that, and semicolon. All right, so next we'll say console write line. Oops. And we'll say $. All right, so now we're going to say remaining seats is equal to remaining seats, and then divided by capacity. Oops, divided by capacity. All right, so these are the remaining seats here. Okay, we'll go ahead and close. Oh, I need a quotation mark there. All right, finally, console write line and $, and then we're going to say ticket price. Oops. Ticket price, and then we'll say dollars, and then ticket price. Perfect. Close quotation mark and semicolon. All right, great. So that's going to get our flight detail. If I ever want to print that to the console, I can do that. All right. The flight class will have another method that can return the available seats, the number of available seats. So public int check, call it check available seats. And this, we're just going to return the remaining seats. All right, great. So I'm going to scroll down here. And the next, or the last method we're going to have on our flight class is a void, and we'll book the seat. Allow someone to book the seats. And in order to book a seat, they're going to need a ticket. Okay, so we'll hit tab. Notice how it nicely auto-completes the method for me. All right, so we'll put in an algorithm here. Again, you can expand on this, but we'll say if remaining seats is greater than 0, so that means there are remaining seats. What I'll do is I'll say tickets dot add. Okay, so we'll add the ticket. So if there's a remaining seat, we'll add the ticket. All right, to this flight, and then we'll deduct the remaining seats. So remaining seats minus minus. Okay, and then also we'll say ticket dot passenger. We haven't created the passenger class yet. We will in a second. Ticket. So passenger has one or more tickets, and we'll add to the passenger a ticket. All right, and we'll go ahead and create this in a second. Okay. Add ticket. All right. I'm going to hover over the passenger object here, which is throwing an error, and we'll say generate class. We'll go ahead and add a class here. I'll right-click the models, add a passenger class here, just for the time being. Passenger. Okay, it'll create an empty passenger class. We'll fix that in a moment. So if there are no remaining seats, no remaining seats left, we'll just log a message here. So we'll say else console dot write line, and what we'll say is no available seats on this flight. All right. So again, it won't compile, but we have the basic flight class set up. Okay. We have our properties of the flight class. We have our constructor. We have a few methods here to get us some information about the flight details, check the available seats, and then finally book a seat using a ticket. Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and next set up the ticket class. Okay. So we'll go ahead and fill that out. Right. So the ticket class, let's go ahead and define it. So a ticket, what does it consist of? Right. The first thing is a string ticket number. Okay. Get set. A ticket also has a passenger attached to it, right? So passenger, and we'll say passenger get set, perfect. Okay. And then also a ticket has a flight property. So it's kind of referencing the flight class. So we'll say get set. And then finally, a ticket has a seat number. All right. Again, you can feel free to add more attributes if you like, right? Do get set. Okay. Now, in order to set up a ticket class, very simple. It's just going to have a constructor and one method. So we'll say public ticket, and the constructor will take a ticket number. It'll also take a passenger. Okay, and a flight. So that's good, flight. And then one more, the last, and a seat number. Perfect. All right, notice how it auto-completes it for me. This is beautiful. Okay, I'll go ahead and define these. Notice it auto-completes it for me, which is nice. Passenger, flight. I hit tab. Notice this is amazing. That's the beauty of Visual Studio 2022. Okay, so there's the ticket class. So public ticket. All right, everything looks good there. Let me see if I have any mistakes. Passenger. Okay, yeah. So passenger. I'm just gonna make this a public public class on the passenger. Now I shouldn't complain about ticket. The ticket class, again, just get ticket details will be one method there. So public void get ticket details. All right. And what I'll do is we'll say console dot write line. Okay. And $. Give some info like ticket number. And that's going to be the ticket number. All right. And autocomplete console dot write line. And then it's going to be the passenger. Okay, and the passenger, we'll just give it the passenger name here. So passenger dot name. All right, and that's good. Again, we haven't defined those properties. We will in a moment here on the passenger object. All right, so we have console dot write line. I'll hit tab, $, flight information, and we'll say flight dot flight number. All right, tab out of that. Console dot write line. This is so nice. I can just keep tabbing. Speeds up development, right? So seat number, and that's going to be the seat number. All right, and tab out. Perfect. All right, so I'll go ahead and just save everything here. All right, so we finished our ticket class, our flight class, and finally, we're going to define our passenger class. All right, so we'll head over to the passenger object here or class and define some properties. So we'll define a public string passenger ID. And you can use ID. I'm using passenger ID here. Public string, the name of the passenger. All right. Public string. Again, once you define all these things, you can always modify them and change it around so it mimics, let's say, for example, Expedia booking, right? Or real world booking, right? So we'll say public string phone number. And get set. And then finally, a passenger has a collection of one or more tickets, right? So public list of, oops, sorry, my mouse moved over. Public list of ticket. Okay, and it has tickets. And we'll say get set. Perfect. Okay. Next, we'll define the constructor of the passenger. So public passenger, and we'll pass in the string name, string email, and string phone number. Nice. Auto completes it. And name. Well, first we'll randomly assign a GUID to this passenger ID. So we'll say passenger ID equals new. Now you can use a GUID class. That's nice. All right. Dot to string. Okay, that should set up a new GUID for each passenger we create. And then we'll say name. We'll tab out of that. Email. I think it already auto-completed that. Email. Nice. Tab out of that. Phone number. Very nice. And then the passenger has tickets as a new list of tickets. Wow. Visual Studio detected that as an autocomplete. Beautiful. All right, and then we'll finally just print out some passenger details. So public void get passenger details. Okay. All right, so we'll say console dot writeline. Okay, writeline, and the $sign passenger ID is the passenger ID. All right, tab out of that. Console dot writeline tab. We'll give it the name of the passenger. So that's going to be name. And let it autocomplete that. And then again, autocomplete, hit tab, email. And that's going to be the email of the passenger. Tab out of that. And finally, console.writeline phone number. Okay. So we'll just display the phone number here. All right. And let that tab out. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save everything. Run a quick build, so you can click on build, rebuild solution, just to make sure we have no mistakes in our domain models here. All right, rebuild all succeeded. All right, perfect. So we have our flight class, our passenger class, our ticket class. All right. Again, feel free to adjust the algorithm or define your own methods there. This should get us started at least. All right, so this is a domain layer. Domain layer setup. Next video, we'll move on to the application layer, start to define our airline booking system logic. Thank you. All right, so now that we've defined our domain layer in our models folder, we're going to go ahead and set up our application layer, which holds our services, their interfaces, and their concrete definitions. So I'm going to right-click our application project here. Add a new folder, and we're going to name that interfaces. Okay, and then we'll add one more folder to that, and we'll name that services. Services. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to right-click our interfaces folder, add a new item, and we're going to choose interface here, and I will name that our iBooking service. Okay, so this is our first service interface, iBooking service. All right, we'll make that public here. All right, perfect. So let's define some methods for our booking service. So we're going to make these async. All right, so task add flight. All right, so in order to add a flight, you pass it a flight object. Okay, flight. All right, I'm going to add a reference to so now our application layer is going to depend on our domain layer. So I'm going to add a reference. You'll see if you hover over flight, the error, you can use this dropdown, add a reference to airlinesystem.domain, and it should fix that error for you and add the right reference, project reference. You can actually see it on the dependencies under projects, airline system domain. All right. Next, we're going to add a task list. Oops. A list. Yeah, sorry. Task list of flights. Okay. And we're going to say search flights. Okay. In order to search flights, we need a string departure airport. So we'll call it departure, a destination, and some sort of day you want to book your flight for, right? Date time. and we'll say date. Okay. Next, we're going to have the ability to get a flight, one single flight back, task flight, and we'll say get flight. And this is going to take a flight number. Next, we want to be able to book a flight, so we'll say task book flight. Flight, it takes in a flight, a passenger, okay, and a seat number. All right, and then we can expand on the cancellation. We can do that later, but we can say something like task cancel booking, okay, and it takes a ticket number. Again, feel free to add on your own methods or modify these as you see fit. And then we're going to add one last method to our interface. It's just going to initialize our flights. Right now, I haven't set up the repository yet. We'll go ahead and do this eventually in this course. But we'll add a method that's kind of a void that initializes the flights. So we'll say initialize flights. Oops. Initialize flights. And it doesn't take any argument. It just sets up a few demo flights, all right, dummy flights. So here's our booking service interface. Next, we're going to go ahead and set up our actual booking service that implements all these methods in our interface. Okay, so I'll right-click our service layer, add class, call this our booking service. All right, we'll make that public. Now, the booking service is going to implement the interface we just created. So it's going to implement, that's a colon, I booking service. Okay. Now, the nice thing is if you hover over that, you can say implement interface. All right. So I'm going to go to hover over that and choose implement interface. Oh. All right. There we go. It added all the methods that we need to implement here. All right, before we do that, what we'll do is we'll define a local variable here, private list of flights, okay, and we'll call this, and private variables, I normally name them with an underscore, so flights. And what we'll do is we'll create a constructor for the booking service, so booking service. And this is going to be an empty constructor or empty argument constructor, and we'll create a new list of flights. Nice, it auto completes. And then finally, whenever we create an instance of this booking service, we'll initialize the flights. Okay, initialize the flights. All right, perfect. So let's start to implement some of these methods for our booking service. So in order to add a flight, that should be straightforward. We just take the flight collection. And just say add flight. All right, just we can auto-complete that. That's nice. So remember, these are all async await methods. So I'm going to add an async in front of all these guys here, in front of all these methods. Okay, you could just copy this and go ahead and add it in front of each of the tasks here. All right, perfect. So we added a flight. Okay, next we want to be able to book a flight. So let's see how that's going to work. We're going to first define a ticket. So we can say var ticket equals new ticket. All right, so ticket takes a brand new ticket number. Okay, so we'll utilize the GUID class here and say new GUID toString. Okay, next it takes a passenger, so we'll just pass in the passenger here. Takes a flight, so we'll pass in the incoming flight there, and then finally the seat number. All right, so we created an instance of a ticket object. All right, finally we're going to use the flight, okay, dot book seat. Okay, so the incoming flight, we're going to book the seat using this ticket that we just created. All right. And again, I'm going to put in a comment here. We're going to say assume we have some sort of payment service. We'll probably create that at a later point in this course. We'll say assume there's a payment uh, handling here. And we can just, for now, console.writeLine. And we'll just print out ticket booked successfully for passenger.name. All right, payment processed, just for now. Again, we could make use of RabbitMQ and some queuing and a payment service and so on. Again, we have so many options here with microservices. Okay, so that's your book a flight. What I'll do is I'll put in some logic here for cancel booking. Again, you don't have to implement this for the course, but I'm just adding it in here if you want to play with it. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll loop through each flight. So we'll say flight in our flights collection. So underscore flights. Okay, what we'll do is we'll find the ticket first. Okay, so var ticket equals flight dot tickets dot find. And what we'll do is we'll try to locate the ticket based on the ticket number. So t dot ticket number equals the incoming ticket number. Okay. And then we'll check if there is a ticket. So it means if ticket is not equal to null. Nice. Notice how it auto completes everything for me, which is beautiful. Okay. What I'll do is I'll take the flight, grab the tickets, okay, and then remove the ticket from that flight. Okay. All right. And then what we'll do is once we remove a ticket, we got to add the remaining seats gets bumped up by one. So we'll say flight dot remaining seats plus plus. All right. And then we'll also remove the ticket from the passenger on that flight. So flight dot passenger dot tickets dot remove, and then we'll remove the ticket. Okay. Oh, passenger. Oh, flight doesn't have a. Thought we had a passenger in there. Oh, I did. Did I? Oh, it's supposed to be ticket dot passenger. I'm sorry. Ticket dot passenger. Okay. So we're going to take the ticket, the passenger on that ticket, and remove the ticket from that passenger. Okay. And we'll put in a placeholder here. We'll say assume there's some sort of refund it's going to take place. So refund processing here. And we'll just console.writeLine. And we'll say booking canceled for ticket. We'll put in the ticket number. And then we'll say refund processed. Okay. And close that guy. Okay, and then we'll break out of this loop once we find that exact ticket based on the ticket number. Okay, next we're going to get a flight based on the flight number. This should be easy. We just return out of the list collection of flights where, so we find the flight where the flight number, so f dot flight number, okay, equals the flight number that's incoming there, okay, and the first object that's returned out of the collection of flights. Okay. All right. Next, what we're going to do is set up initialize flights. Okay. Before I do that, let's go ahead and add the search flights here. So what we'll do is we'll say return. This should be also simple. Out of the list of flights, find all. Get me all the flights that have a departure airport. So departure airport equal to the departure that's incoming, and the destination airport equals the destination, okay, equals, and the departure time dot date, because it's a date time, right, equals the incoming date. All right, so that should allow me to find the flights. All right, so that's a date dot date. Okay, and we'll end that one. So basically, we're searching flights based on the departure airport, the destination airport, and the date that you want to depart. Okay. What we're going to do now is add a flight. Okay. So what we can do is here we can say to initialize the flights, we can say flights, and we're going to add some dummy flights. Again, you can store this in a database in a backend, in some sort of cache. Um, we'll go ahead and do that later on in this course. But for right now, I'm going to set up 3 basic flights. Okay, so flights.add, and we'll say new flight object. Okay, and we can use a constructor here. We need some sort of flight number. Again, I'm going to just give it some random. Again, feel free to make up whatever you like here. ABC 123, going from JFK to LAX. Okay, and then new date time, and then we'll give it 2024. All right, we'll say 03 20, so March 20th, 0 at 8 hours, right? 8 o'clock. All right, 0000. So that sets up the date time of the departure, and then we'll set up a flight that arrives at, let's say, date time, and we'll set up a constructor 2024 03. It arrives the same day, let's say. Again, you can make this up here. 00 minutes and seconds. Okay. And now capacity. So again, feel free to make up these numbers. I'm going to say there's 200 total seats on this flight from JFK to LAX, and the ticket price is 150. Okay. Again, feel free to make up the numbers here. All right. I'm going to go ahead and copy this 3 more times, and feel free to add as many flights as you like. I'm going to add that 3 more times, and then I'm going to just change some of the variables here. Instead of ABC123, we'll call that 456. 456. And this again, go to JFK LAX. We'll give it a date of 320. Again, same day. Maybe there's 2 flights going that way, and the same time. Okay. Again, you can make up the price. Let's just make it up. Let's just say this one has only 180 seats capacity, and the flight price is 175 or 175. Oops, 175. All right, and the final flight. Again, feel free. This is all random data, dummy data. DEF, and we'll say 456. And this one might be going from LAX to JFK. Okay, and let's create the departure and arrival time. We'll make this the 25th, and it's going to be 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. All right, and then it arrives on the 26th again, the same day, at 2 o'clock. Okay, 1400 hours. And then the capacity, we'll just say this capacity is 250, and the ticket price on this one is, let's just make it 315. That's fine. Okay, so we set up initialized flights. We're able to search flights in our booking service, get a flight based on a flight number, cancel a booking based on a ticket number, book a flight given a flight object, passenger object, and a seat number. We're able to add flights. Okay. So again, instead of the collection here, you could use this method. I just added these methods as examples. Feel free to modify. All right, so we've defined our booking service, our interface for our booking service. That's within our application layer. Next, we'll move on to our IOC container, and then we'll set up our API. All right, so now we have our domain layer set up, our application layer or service layer set up. We're going to set up our IOC layer or our dependency container. Okay. So I'm going to right-click our IOC project, add a new class here. And we can just call that dependency container. So dependency container. Okay. Click on add. We'll make this a public static class this time. All right. So this one's fairly simple. We're going to have a method to register our services. So again, this is going to be used within our API for the dependency injection pipeline. All right. So we'll say public static void, and we'll just call it register services. And this is going to take an iService collection interface. So service collection, and then this is going to be our services. All right. Now, iService collection, you'll see it's going to be found as part of the Microsoft Extensions Dependency Injection Abstractions package. So we can install the latest version of that package. Notice it resolves references, right? And all I'm going to do is say services.add singleton. All right, so I'm going to add a singleton instance of our booking service. Okay. This means that for the entire lifetime of the application, no matter which requests or responses are coming through, it's going to create one instance of the booking service. Now, you could play with it and change it to transient or scoped, depending on how you'd like the booking service to handle objects and their state. So I'm going to add a singleton of iBooking service, all right, and then the concrete class, and then close it. All right, so I'll hover over iBooking service and add a reference to the application layer. Again, you can right-click the IOC dependencies, add a project reference, and choose application. I'm going to hover over booking service using airline booking service interfaces. And for the booking service, again, using the services. All right, so that's our IOC container or dependency container project. All right, very simple. We're going to use this, you'll see in the next video, in our API layer. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the solution just to make sure everything's good. Rebuild all succeeded. I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, so we've completed our application layer, domain layer, and our inversion of control layer, or our dependency container. We're going to move on to our API. All right, when we first created our API project, it came with a default weather forecast controller and a weather forecast model here. So what I'm going to do is right-click the weather forecast model, delete it, hit OK here. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on the weather forecast controller. We're going to rename that, so I'll right-click, rename, and we're going to change that to our booking controller. Okay, so booking controller. And it's going to ask me to rename everything that references the weather forecast controller. I'm going to choose yes. Notice here, it'll change the name of the controller. I'm going to get rid of the static summaries here. That's part of the default project, so I can remove that. I'll leave the logger in there. We'll leave the constructor in there. That's fine. And then I'm going to get rid of this method here. That was the get weather forecast. All right. So we have our basic booking controller. So what I'm going to do is dependency inject the booking service. All right. So let me show you how to set that up. So we're going to create a private read-only iBooking service. Okay, and that we'll name it underscore booking service, right? And we will inject that. Let's add a reference first to airline system application layer. And then I'll go ahead and inject the iBooking service. And booking service, and then here it should autocomplete for me. Very nice. All right, so we're going to have 2 routes for now, or we can have 3 routes, one for search flights, book flight, and cancel booking. All right. So what I'm going to do is create an attribute here for the HTTP method HTTP get. Notice it auto completes it for me. HTTP get here. Okay. And we're going to say public async task, and it's going to be an iAction result. Okay. And we're going to call it search flights. Okay. Search flights. And in order to search flights on our controller or our API, we're going to allow the user to pass in a departure airport, a destination airport, and a date time of when they're departing. Let's call it date here, and open close. All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and close this window. Again, the route, we're going to call this a search. Very simple. So it's the booking controller. So it's going to be /booking/search. Okay, on the HTTP get. And here it's very simple. We're going to say here are the flights. Okay, and we're going to await the async call to our booking service dot search flights. And notice the search flights takes a departure, destination, date. I can autocomplete that. Very nice. And I'll just return a 200 HTTP status status code, and then return the flights back. Very nice. Very simple. Again, that's the nice thing about 2022. It will autocomplete a lot of the code for you. All right. So now, once a user searches for flights, they should be allowed to book the flight. So we'll call this HTTP post. And the route here is going to be book. Very simple. Okay. And this is going to be, again, public, async, task, action result. And this is going to be book flight. Okay. And now what we're going to do is create a new request object. All right. So we're going to call this the book flight request object, all right, and it's going to be our request. We haven't defined that yet. We'll go ahead and define that in our models library or project, all right. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'll head over to my domain layer, okay, and in the domain layer, I'm going to create I'm going to right-click the models and add a new class, and that's going to be called the book flight request class. This is going to be used kind of to map our object coming in from React once we set up the React application. So in order to book a flight, we're going to need the public string flight number. All right. And we're also going to need the name, email, and phone number of the passenger. So name, we'll let it autocomplete. Okay. And then we're going to need the public string email of the passenger. Okay. It's going to get set. And then finally the phone number, public string phone number. And that's it. So that's our flight book request object. I'm going to head back to our booking controller. I'm going to hover over this and add a reference to the domain models. Okay. And inside of our booking controller, we're going to go ahead and set up the logic to book the flight. All right, so start with a passenger object. We'll create a new passenger, and the passenger needs a name. So that's coming in from our request, our book flight request. So that's going to be the name, the email of the passenger, and finally the phone number of the passenger. Perfect. So I created a new passenger. So now we're going to go ahead and get the flight based on the flight number. So we're going to await. Use our booking service to get flight, and that's going to be our request.flight number. Beautiful. So I have an instance of the flight, and then I'm finally going to use our booking service to book the flight. Okay. Again, feel free to change this logic around however you see fit. Book flight takes a passenger, a passenger, and some seat. All right. So for right now, I'm just going to call it A1 for the seat number. Okay, we can add some additional logic there, but right now I'm just getting it set up so we can consume it from our React application. And we will just return an HTTP OK or 200 status code. And we'll just say flight booked successfully. Okay, that's about it. All right, so we booked the flight. We'll add one more HTTP method type. That's going to be for HTTP delete, and that's going to be a route of cancel and given the ticket number. So if someone wants to cancel the flight, they can. So async task action result, and we'll call this cancel booking, and using the incoming ticket number. Perfect. All right. So again, make use of our booking service, which is nice. It's injected cancel booking, and based on the ticket number. Ticket number. All right, and then we'll return an OK and a message saying booking canceled successfully. All right. So we've defined our entire API. That's our API for now. We're allowing users to search for flights, book a flight, and cancel a flight. Okay. Now, how do we set up the dependency injection um, for our booking service? So what I'm going to do is, it's nice to separate concerns. So I'm going to right-click our API project, add a new folder that's going to contain all of our configs. You can have multiple configs, so I'm going to call this configurations. Okay, I'm going to right-click that, add a class, and that class can be called dependency injection config. All right, and this class, it's going to be a static class, so public static. Okay, and I'll show you where I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it in the pipeline, which is in the program CS in a second. So here, I'm going to create a method called public static void add dependency injection configuration. Okay, and it takes this. So this is an extension method, all right? iService collection of services. Services, all right? Okay. So we'll say if we'll do a check on the services. If services equals null, then we'll throw a new argument null exception, which is here, and then we'll provide it name of services. Perfect. All right. Otherwise, we'll just say dependency container. So this is where we're going to use our dependency container layer. So we'll say dependency container dot register services. Notice I have to add a reference to our dependency container. So what we need to do is right-click dependencies, add project reference to our IOC here. Okay. Once that's added, I should be able to use airline system.ioc. Beautiful. Now, how do we use this? So this is the beauty of .NET Core, .NET 6, 7, and so on. You can easily set up these custom methods here, these static methods, and use it in your pipeline, in your program CS. All right. So what I'm going to do is head over to our program CS, and right before it builds our container here, we're going to say builder.services dot add dependency. So we got to spell it out. Add dependency injection configuration. All right, now notice it's just kind of like similar to the built-in .NET methods. We can add a reference to our configurations, and it will reference or dependency inject our booking service. That's the whole point of this. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save this, rebuild the solution. I'm going to do a quick check on my properties here, my launch settings. Everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and try to launch the API. So right-click the API project, set as startup project. Okay. I'll go ahead and debug it. So we'll hit play up here. All right. Hopefully there's no errors, and we'll wait for it to come up. If it does, it should show us a Swagger page here that defines all of our endpoints. Okay. Okay, so we got an exception. I think it's because I'm missing a close bracket here. All right, we'll go ahead and run that again. And once it compiles, it's going to launch our API. All right, and you're going to see a new page open. Very nice, Airline System API. Beautiful. It's a Swagger page, and shows me all my routes here, so I can search for flights. In this case, let's give it a try. So departure, let's try JFK, and we're going to choose destination LAX. And then our date is going to be 2024-03. I think I put in 20 for the date. Let's go ahead and execute that. Yeah, and I got 2 flights that came back. Very nice. Got a GET call. I got a 200 status code, HTTP status code. Very nice. I can actually take one of these flight numbers. Okay, Control C. Let's see if we can actually book the flight. We'll go ahead and try to book the flight here. So flight number, Control V. I'll give it a passenger name, Manish Narayan. And then my email, we can just put anything Narayan at test.com. And then phone number, I'll just put in a 12345678890. I'm going to click execute. And we got a 200 flight booked successfully. Beautiful. All right. Um, so that flight's booked successfully. All right. Now I haven't tested the cancel. You can go ahead and play with the cancel logic. So we're able to at least search flights and book flights using our API. And you'll see how simple that is. We developed a microservice here very quickly using a clean architecture approach. All right, now that we have our API set up, in our next section, we're going to go ahead and set up our front-end application to allow users to log in, log out, search flights, and then choose a flight, and then book the flight. All right, so now that we have the API running, I want to adjust something in the program for the API. So in our model library, just for this example, in the airline booking system, we have objects that depend or reference themselves in other objects, right? For example, flight has a list of tickets. Now, if I head over to ticket, ticket has a flight as well. So this is kind of a self-reference, right? A reference cycle. So I'm going to fix it so we don't have any errors in our controllers in the JSON serialization. So what I'm going to do is, notice here in our program CS, we have a builder services add controllers, right? I'm going to add a couple options here. So I'm going to head over to the end of this. And I'm going to say add JSON options, all right? And this is for the serializer, JSON serializer option. So I'm going to say options. And here I'm going to add an options dot JSON serializer options dot reference handler, right? And we're going to set this to reference handler dot, and we're going to say ignore cycles, okay? And that should close out the semicolon. So that should help with any sort of classes that self-reference each other multiple times, all right? So that should do it for our API. We'll head over to the next section of the course, build out our front end using React, and then we'll couple everything together with Auth0 for authentication and authorization. All right, welcome to the next section of the course. We completed our API on the server side. We're going to now set up a React app. So in order to use React, we need to install Node.js. So I provided the link in the resources for this section. You can head over to nodejs.org and download the latest version or whatever version you currently use for Node.js. So once you install that on the proper operating system, you can head over to your terminal or your command prompt. I'm using Windows here. So what I'm going to do is head over to my development folder. So I can say cd space, let's go to users, and we'll go to Manish Home Office. And I think I have a source. Yep, cd source, cd space repo, repos, sorry. Again, feel free to use your own path here. So now I have this is where I store all the repos. So what I'm going to do is just, once I install Node, I'm going to check the Node version, right? Notice I have 18.17.1. It's probably a later version on Node site. So once Node is installed, we're going to set up our React app using the CRA, which is a create React app command. All right. So what I'm going to do is head over to your repos. I'm going to type in npx create React app, and then give it the name of your app. So what we'll do is we'll call it our airline booking app. Okay. Hit enter. So it might take a second here to set up the React app. It's going to be setting up all the packages, installing all the packages for our React app. Once that's done, we'll install any other dependencies we need, and then we'll head over and start to use Visual Studio Code to develop our React app. All right, so now that we have created our airline booking app in React, we're going to head over to the folder. So I'll cd into airline booking app. Okay. If I hit a dir, you'll see that it created a git ignore file. node modules, package JSON that has all of my dependencies in it, and then it created a source folder and a README. All right, so what you can do to open up this new app in Visual Studio Code. Again, you can download Visual Studio Code. I provided the link in the resources. Feel free to use any editor that you're comfortable with. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, so I can just type in code dot, okay? And this should launch Visual Studio Code, all right? And once that's launched, I should be able to start to run my new React app. Simple as that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Notice that the basic airline booking app in React has a source folder. Okay, inside the source folder, we have an app.js. All right, that's kind of our function here. We're gonna return some sort of HTML. Right, this is all defaulted in when you create a new React app. Notice it has a default index CSS style sheet. Has an index.js. All right, so creates the root element here, and notice there's an app component here. And again, feel free to set this up the way you feel comfortable. I'm going to show you a clean architecture pattern with React as well, just like we did for the .NET 6 Web API. All right, so let's just test our basic React app, airline booking app, and what we can do is launch it. So I'm going to go to terminal here, set up a new terminal. All right. I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to first of all run npmi. So this installs all the latest packages that's set up in our package JSON. All right. We're going to install Axios. That's a library we're going to use to make our API calls to our .NET 6 Web API. So I'm going to say npm install Axios. Once it installs Axios, we'll go ahead and launch our React app, and it's as simple as running npm start. Okay. Now, once it starts, the default port for the React is port 3000, but if that's in use, notice it comes up here. I have something running on 3000, so it's saying, would you like to run the app on another port instead? I'm going to choose yes here. Okay, and in a second here, it should launch the React app. Okay, you'll notice it's coming up and it's running on port 3002. Okay, so keep note of that. Our React app is running on localhost, HTTP localhost port 3002. Okay, notice that here's our basic React app. Again, you could feel free to edit your React app, your app.js. You can add some logic here or change the HTML. I'm going to say airline booking system. Okay, and if I save it, notice it will automatically compile and reload the page. So I'll hit Control S, and notice at the bottom here it compiled successfully. If I head over to the page, notice it immediately in real time updates the page. So here's the airline booking system. Okay, all right. So that's that's setting up the React app for our airline booking system. Notice how quickly we can get a front-end application up and running using the create React app command. Next, we'll set up our folder structure, and then we'll build out the various components and services. All right, so now that we have our basic airline booking app in React, I'm going to show you how to set up a folder structure. Again, feel free to follow different architecture or folder structure styles that you see fit. I like to follow a simple, clean approach where I have different folders for components, pages, buttons, services, and styles. So what I'm going to do is first thing to do is right-click the source folder, add a new folder here, and we're going to call this components. Okay. Underneath components, we might have some buttons. So I'm going to create a new folder under components and call that buttons. All right. And then under the source folder, we're going to have a separate folder for all of our pages. So I'm going to hit new folder under source, call it pages. Okay. And then to take care of our API calls and network layer, I'm going to make another folder called services under source. So right click source, choose new folder, and we'll call this services. Okay. And finally, for our custom CSS, I'm going to right click the source folder add a new folder and call that styles. Great. So notice we have buttons under components. We have pages, services, and styles. All right. So in the next video, we'll set up our first set of styles, and then we'll move on to services and then build out all of our components, buttons, and pages. All right. So the first thing to do is set up our styles. So I'm going to right-click the styles folder, add a new file, and we'll call this styles.css. All right. This is our cascading style sheet for our airline booking app. All right, so here I'm going to start with again, we haven't built out all the components, but I'm going to set up the styles for them. Again, feel free to choose your own styles, button types, different style sheets that you want to import. That's fine. I'm going to start with a search form definition. All right, and in the search form, I'm going to set up my display, flex. Okay, display is flex. All right, I'm going to set up the flex direction. And we're going to say column and then max width. And we're going to say 400 pixels. Again, feel free to choose your own styles. I'm just going to run through this fairly quickly. Margin bottom, 20 pixel. Okay. We have the search form. Now we're going to have the input button or input, the input for the search form. And we'll say search form input and margin bottom. All right, and that's going to be 10 pixels. And then we'll have padding, 10 pixels, border, 1 pixel, and we'll do solid. And then we'll do CCC for the color here. All right, and then the border radius, and that's going to be 5 pixels. All right, perfect. So that's the search form input. Then we're going to have the search form button, and we'll go ahead and style that. So we're going to start with some padding there. So padding, and that's going to have 10 pixels as a setting. And then border is none, border radius, and that's going to be 5 pixel. Oops, 5 pixel. And then we'll have a background color, and that's going to be hash 007 BFF. Okay, right? And then that's a blue. Again, feel free to play around with this. All right, it's going to be FFF here for the color, and then the cursor, we're going to have a pointer. Okay, next we're going to have a flight card to show all the list of flights once we search for the flights. Okay, so here's the definition of the flight card. We have a border, and that's going to be 1 pixel solid and CCC, and then border radius, and that's going to be 5 pixels. 5 pixels. All right. We have some padding there, and that's 20 pixels. Margin bottom, and that's going to be 20 pixels. All right. Once we set up the flight card, we're going to set up the heading level 3. So it's going to be a dot flight card, and then H3 margin top, and that's going to be 0. Okay. Now we're going to have a book button. So once we choose, we know what flight we want to book, we're going to have a booking button. So we'll say book button. Okay. And we'll give it some padding, 8 pixel, 12 pixels. Okay, border none. And then border radius, that's going to be 5 pixels. And then we have the background color. Same thing, it's going to be a blue, so hash 007 BFF. All right, and then let me scroll down. Background color, then we're going to have the color, and that's going to be just FFF. Again, similar to the input button here, the search form button, sorry. Color is white there, cursor, pointer. Okay, that's a book button. All right, then we're going to have a dot booking form input. So this is where we pass in our name, our email, our phone number in order to book. That's a booking form, all right? So we're going to say width is going to be 100% and margin bottom is 10 pixels. Padding is 8 pixels. Okay. All right, so that's going to be the input fields for the booking form. All right, we're going to have also a booking form label. So dot booking form, and then we're going to have a label for the booking form. Okay, and display, oops, display is block. All right, and margin bottom, and that's going to be 5 pixels. Okay, now we're going to have the booking form button. So this is for once you input all the fields in the booking form, we're going to go ahead and have a button to book, to actually place the booking. Okay, so booking form button will have a width on there of 100%, and then we'll have padding, and that's going to be 10 pixels, and then background color, and that's going to be again similar to everything else, 7 BFF, and then we'll have color, and that's going to be FFF, and then we'll have border, none. Okay, border radius, that's going to be 5 pixels. Cursor and pointer. All right, and finally, we're going to have the booking form hover over button. All right, so booking form, booking form button hover. Okay, and then this is background color, and that's going to be again, well, let's make it slightly different. 00, that's 56B3. Okay, it turns a little bit darker. So Control S. So it should set up our styles. All right, and now we have the styles available to use in any of our pages, components, and so on. So I'll see you in the next video. All right, so we finished our styles. The next, probably the most important part of the React app here in our project is the services layer. So what I'm going to do is add a new JavaScript file under services. Now you can have various microservices. Right now we're going to have a booking. You'll notice we created a booking service, right? Airline System API booking service. I'm just going to launch this for a second, and just to take note of the port that it was running on. So you'll remember that we have it running on localhost port 5114. Okay, so I'm going to head back over to the React app. We're going to create a new file here, and here we have we can name it Booking API. All right, JS. Now you can have various microservices, as I was saying. You can have a payment service, a payment API, email API, reporting API, and so on. So here we're going to create a booking-api.js. Okay, this we're going to make use of our library we installed earlier. That was the Axios library. There are other libraries like Fetch and others that allow you to make API calls or RESTful calls. So here first thing we're going to do is import Axios and from Axios. Okay, that's the first statement. Let me zoom in here so you guys can see it. There we go. It's a little bit better. Okay. All right. So next, what we're going to do is set up our API's base URL. So I'll create a constant here, and all caps will say base URL, and that's going to be equal to wherever our API is running. So you'll notice that our API is running on HTTP port 5114, right? So we had the HTTP port 5114 right here. So I can actually copy this. Control C, head back over to the React app, punch that in here. So we have our API running on port 5114. Great. All right. Now we're going to export two API methods here. One is to search flights, and the second one is going to be to book a flight. All right. So first thing we're going to do is export constant search flights. Okay. And we're going to make this async. And search flights, it takes in a departure, destination, and a date. Okay. And within the search flights, we'll add a try catch. Okay, try. And then here we'll write down catch for any errors. Okay. All right. So now within the try, we're going to actually use the Axios call to call our API. Okay. So constant response equals await. All right. Axios.get. And then here we're going to use this tilde, and then we're going to say set up the call the API base URL, which is this guy. Okay, API base URL. And in order to search flights, you'll recall that in our API, if I hit get here, remember to try it out. You can try it out here. We set up JFK, LAX, give it a date here, 0320. When I hit execute, notice it tells me the endpoint, right? So booking, search, we have some query string parameters, departure, destination, date, right? So you can actually take this whole thing and punch it in to our code. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. That's our endpoint in order to call the search flights, all right? So what we're going to do is say /booking, all right, and then search, and then question mark for our query string parameters. So departure equals, and then that's going to be a $ departure. That's our incoming parameter here, okay? All right, and then we're going to have another variable here, two more variables for our destination and date, right? So I type in and for the next query string parameter, all right, and that's going to be destination. So we're going to say and destination equals, and then again $ and use our departure variable there, all right, and then one more is the date. So and date equals $ and date. Okay. All right. So that should make the get call. So notice it's going to use Axios and use a get call. All right, because our method is a HTTP get. Okay, it's a getter for the booking search. Right, takes in departure, destination, and date. Okay. So if I head back over there, we set up the Axios call. All right. So once we get the call back, we can just return the response. Okay. And what I'll do is say return response. Okay. And if there's any error, what we'll do is we'll just console log the error, and we'll say error searching flights. Okay. And then log the error there. All right. And then we'll throw the exception here. Okay. All right. So put a semicolon there. So this is one method in our booking API service layer that allows us to search flights. Okay. You set up the base URL here. All right. Now, if the port changes something, you can change it in one place rather than hard code the base URL everywhere. All right. So that's in order to search for flights, and we want to have one more piece of functionality. Once we search for flights, we want to be able to call our API to book the flight. All right. So again, we'll say export constant book flight, okay, equals async, and this one's going to take a book flight request. Okay. You'll recall that in our models in our service layer in our .NET 6 API, we created a book flight request object, right? That consists of the flight number, the name, the email, and the phone number. Okay. So here I'm going to close this, and then we'll add another try catch. Okay. So we'll say catch error. All right. So within this, again, very similar to the get or search flights. All right. This time we're going to use Axios to post our book flight request. Okay. Here I'm going to set up a config. All right, for Axios and define some headers. So I'm going to say headers. Okay. And we're going to say content type. Okay. Is application JSON. All right. That's the type of the format of the post request payload. All right. So JSON. Okay. And that's about it for the config. All right. Next, we're going to actually make the call. So that's going to be constant response equals await. axios.post. Again, tilde, and then we're going to use our API base URL. Okay, this guy here. All right, and in order to post, remember that's our booking controller, so it's / booking, and then we're going to say book. Okay, and then what we do is we pass the book flight request. Okay, book flight request. All right, and that's it for the post call. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end this semicolon, and then what we do is return the response. Okay, if there's any error, we'll just again console log. I can just copy the one from the search flights. We'll just change the console log message. So we'll say error booking flight. Okay, so booking flight, and we'll log the error. All right, so that's our booking API. Notice it's very simple. We can use or take advantage of the Axios library to make a call to any microservice. In this case, we have a microservice for a booking that was written in .NET 6. Web API. It's running on localhost port 5114. All right, so we can go ahead and test this out and see if it works. All right, so in the previous video, we set up our booking API service layer within React. We have two methods. One is to search flights, and the other one is to book flight. I do see I set up departure twice here. Let's just fix that. Destination. Okay. Make sure to update that if you watched the previous video. All right, so that should fix the booking API. All right, this time we're going to create our first component. So what I'm going to do is right-click the components and create a new file, and we're going to call this our search form. Okay, .js. All right, perfect. So this is where we take advantage of the API we built, our style sheets, all right, and then create a simple search form. So first thing I'm gonna do is import React, okay, and then use state, all right, to maintain state from React, okay, all right. And then second, I'm gonna start importing with styles. So if I do a ... head over to styles, I should be able to pick up my styles.css, perfect. All right, and then finally, I'm going to take advantage of our booking API, our search flights. So I'm going to import the search flights, okay, and we'll say from, and then it's going to be again go up folders, right, and services / booking API. All right, perfect. So notice here we should have set up our imports. Now we're going to create a search form. All right, so let's create the template. So search form, and then here we'll just do open close for now equals, and then close this with a semicolon. Okay, and then once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and export default search form. All right. So now let's set up our search form. So what we want to do is be able to hold state of some variables here. All right, so I'm going to say, I'm going to pass in an onSearch event, onSearch. So that's going to be onSearch, okay? And then within the search form, I'm going to create some constants here. One is for departure, right? Departure variable, and we'll call it setDeparture, okay? And then initially, it's empty, so use state, and then we'll give it an empty string, okay? And then the second one is going to be our destination, okay? We'll say set destination equals use state. Again, that's also going to be initially empty. And then finally the date, so we'll say date, and then set date. And again, use state, empty string, all right? Okay. Now, we're going to create a handle search constant here. So we'll say constant handle search async, all right? And this event is going to consist of, we're going to first prevent default here, default, okay? And then this is where we search for flights, okay? So we're going to say constant response will take advantage of our Axios library, or our booking API in this case. So we'll say await search flights, and you'll notice it takes in a departure, destination, and date. And then on search here, all right, so on search, we will return the data, all right? So once we complete the search flights, we'll get the data back. Okay, perfect. So now we have this handle search event here. So finally, once we get a list of flights back when we search the API, we want to be able to uh, display it right on the form, right, and take advantage of our styling. Okay, so we'll say return, and then here we'll create a form, and class name equals search form. Okay, on submit, we'll call the handles search method. All right, so on submit, once we submit the form, we'll call handle search here. So handle search. All right, perfect. And we'll close this. Okay, so that's our form. All right. We're going to have some inputs, 3 inputs, and 1 button to submit it. All right, so we'll have an input here. Okay, that's 1 input here. Let me just move this up. And then we'll have, so 3 inputs and 1 button. Okay, and finally a button. Okay, so our first input is going to be for the departure. All right, so what I'll do is say input, and the input type is submit, sorry, text. All right, and we'll create a placeholder there. So placeholder equals departure. Value is going to be departure. That's our variable, okay? And on change, we will point to this event and set the departure. So once the user types in departure, we'll set this departure variable using set departure, okay? So on change, we're going to have this event, and here we'll say set departure, okay? e.target.value. All right, so perfect. What's going to happen now is we're going to be able to set the departure, right? Once allow the user to input the departure, right? So I'll go ahead and just, you don't need this input tag. I'll just go ahead and space that out. Okay. And same thing here. Okay. Same thing on this one. I'm going to copy this for the next input for the destination. Okay. And here we'll just paste that in. And this is going to be, again, text as a type. Placeholder is going to say destination. Value is going to be destination. Okay, on change, and we'll say set destination. Okay, same thing, e.target.value. All right, and for the final input type, it's going to be the date. So we'll do this. Type equals date. Value equals date variable. Oops. And on change, again, let's have a pointer here, e, and we'll say set date and e.target.value. Okay, perfect. Finally, we have a submit button. So type equals submit. Okay, and we'll just type in the text for the button, and we'll call it search, search flights, or whatever you want to call it. I call it search. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we'll go ahead and launch the React app to make sure there's no errors. All right, so let's make use of this search form we just created, which internally depends on the booking API. So what I'm going to do is head over to my app.js. Notice right now, this is just a default app, right? That's set up for when you create a new React app, right? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get rid of, well, you can leave everything up here. What I'll do is I'll get rid of the top here, the logo and the app CSS. Okay, we're going to import React. Okay, use state from React. All right, and then we're going to import the search form we just created. So we'll say import search form from, and then here it'll be under components, and then search form. Okay. Uh, that's about it right now. Okay, so that's our search form. Oops, I put app in there. Okay, so React. Yeah, perfect. All right. So now what we're going to do is say constant app here. Let's go ahead and remove this for now. I'll remove this function app and I'll show you. We'll create it from scratch here. So we'll say constant app equals, and we'll set up first our um, handle search. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll say constant handle search, and we'll get the data back that handle search returns. Okay. And for right now, what we can do is just we can we can just console log the data. Okay. We'll go ahead and try that. All right. And we'll go ahead and call a return. All right. So once we do this, that's the handle search, hit semicolon, and then we're going to return some HTML. Okay. We'll start with a div tag. Okay. And then within here, we'll have a heading, and we'll say this is our airline booking system or app. Okay. All right, perfect. And then now this is nice in React. I can import my component here that we created, the search form. Okay. So right below the heading, I'm going to just create the search form. Notice I can set up on search event, and that's handle search. Handle search. Okay. And we'll go ahead and close this search form. Perfect. All right, and we'll go ahead and save this. It should recompile my React app here. Okay. All right, compiled successfully, and all right. Well, use state I've never used. State. Where did I have that? Use state. Oh, okay, it's not used. We're not using it yet. All right, so I'll go ahead and head over there. Oh, nice. Okay, so notice it automatically refreshed my React app, the homepage. It set up a departure, destination, and a date. Okay. I'm going to open the network tab here, developer tools on Chrome. Okay. And we're going to type in JFK to LAX. We're going to choose March 20th. Click on search. Okay. It says network error. Okay. So what's going to happen here is, notice here on my error, it says CORS error. Okay, CORS. So what I need to do is allow my API to make requests from my localhost React app, which is running on port 3002. So what I'm going to do is head over to my airline system. Okay, I'm going to stop the API. Okay, I'm going to stop the API, and then I'm going to set up add a CORS policy. Okay, all right. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and head over to the program CS. All right, and what we do is right after our builder. Okay, before we add the controllers, what we can do is say builder dot services dot add CORS. Okay, there you go. All right, and give it some options here. So options, and I will semicolon this guy. All right, so now we'll say options dot add policy. Okay, and we'll call this allow React app. Okay, and comma. All right, we'll say builder, and then we'll give it some parameters here. So we'll say builder dot with origins. Okay, and this is where we enter our React app endpoint. So it's running on HTTP localhost port 3002. That's where our React app is running. Okay, all right, and then we'll say with headers. We'll just leave that for now with origins, and then we'll just say dot allow any method. Okay, allow any method. Okay. In this case, it's any method, HTTP method like get, put, post, delete, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this one, semicolon. All right. I'm going to go ahead and restart my airline system API, and we'll head over to where we got the error here. We'll refresh the page. Okay, give it a moment for the web API to run. All right, there we go. So I'm going to refresh the page. Again, try to make the API call from JFK to LAX search flights. I'm going to choose March 20th. Click on search. Okay, so there's one thing I left out, and we added the course to services, but we didn't use it. All right, so let's go ahead and where our app is, where we're building our container here, we're going to go ahead and say app.useCores. We forgot that, so my fault for that. And then we're going to choose the same name, allow React app. Okay, so now if I go ahead and relaunch the API, all right, give it a moment here. And there's a Swagger page. I'll head over back to the runtime here. I'm going to refresh our localhost 3002 React app. Again, let's go ahead and search JFK, LAX, and then we'll go ahead and choose March 20th. Hit search. All right, perfect. So notice that it called our API, localhost that's running on port 5114. That's our .NET 6 web API, booking controller, and the search route or search endpoint. I passed in the departure, the destination, and the date that we want to book the airline or flight. We did get a response back. Okay, notice, nice. We got a collection, right? A JSON collection here of flights, okay, with all the flight details. All right, nice. So that did return an HTTP 200 call. So it looks like our search form component in React is working, taking advantage of our booking API service layer within React. Okay, give it a try. Feel free to shoot. I think we added 3 dummy flights to the initialize flights method, and make sure all of those work. Now, what we want to do in the next video is list all the flights. So once we search, we want to take this payload that comes back and maybe create some cards, right? Flight cards, and display all the different flights with the flight details. All right, so now that we have a search form and our React UI is able to allow users to search for flights using our booking API that calls our .NET 6 web API, we should be able to now take that result or data from the search flights method and display it as a list of flights on the UI, right? So what I'm going to do is create another component here. So I'll right-click Components, add a new file. We'll call this the flight list.js. Okay, great. So here again, we're going to say import React, useState, and from React. Okay, and then here, we're going to import the styles as well. So we're going to say styles and then styles CSS. Okay, so now what I want to do is for this component, we're going to call it flight list. Okay, so and then we'll export the flight list. So what I'll do is say constant flight list equals, create that empty for now, equals, and then we'll just put a semicolon here. So that's our flight list, and then we'll go ahead and export the flight list. So export default flight list. Okay. All right. So now the flight list. Let's see what takes place. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a list of flights here. Okay. So we'll have flights, and then within the flights, we're going to take advantage of useState to set the selected flight. All right. So constant selected flight, and then set selected flight, okay, and then equals useState, and then initially it's null. All right, the user hasn't selected any flights. All right, then we'll have a handler for selecting the flight. So constant handle flight select, okay, and get the flight And then here, we'll just call the set selected flight, okay? And pass it to flight. All right, perfect. Now we just return some HTML, and we're going to loop through all the flights, and that comes back from the search. Um, and then just display some cards. So we'll take advantage of the map method to loop through all the flights and then set some details regarding all the flights that were searched and that came back from the API call on search flights. All right. So what we'll do is we'll say return, okay, and inside the return we'll have a div. All right, we'll have a heading h2, and we'll say available flights. Okay, available flights. All right, so now what we're going to do is kind of loop through. So we'll say flights.map. Okay, all right, flights.map, and then for each flight, we'll perform some logic. Right. So here we'll say flights map, and we'll create a div element. Okay, oops, create a div, and we'll say class name equals flight card. That's what we defined in our styles. Okay, and the key is going to be the flight number. Okay, all right, key equals, sorry, key equals, okay, flight number. All right, and then we'll have a H3 heading. Okay, and we'll just list or display the flight number. Okay, and then after this heading, we'll just create a paragraph here, and we'll say flight departure airport. Okay, and then to flight destination airport. Okay, and then that should end our. So we're just displaying some information about our flights, looping through each flight, right? We'll create another paragraph here, and we'll say departure time is a flight. Oops, flight departure time. Okay, and then next we'll say P paragraph arrival time. It's gonna be the flight arrival time. Okay, and then we'll have we'll display the price. So we'll say the price, and this is going to be dollars, right? Flight dot ticket price. Okay, all right. Um, and then what we'll do is we'll have a book button. All right. So what we'll do is create a go ahead and after this we'll just create a button here. Button and give it a class name. Book button. Okay. We haven't created. We're next going to create the booking form, but we'll just put a placeholder here. Okay. And here we will just go ahead and book. That's the button name. Okay. And then should end the div. And let me see if I'm missing anything. This is div. Uh, yeah, that should be good. Let's see if I'm missing anything. Div. Let's see what it says. No corresponding closing tag. This is a closing tag. I think I'm missing a parenthesis somewhere. Open bracket, open flight, open this parentheses, and oh, sorry, this should be within. This is a return. Constant flight list, that's fine. This closes the return statement. See what I'm missing here. Div. Oh, I'm missing this div. I'm sorry. So missing this div here, this internal one. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So we close the div, so now there's no more errors. All right, so we're looping through the flights. We just display some information. Again, feel free to change this around. Okay, so now that we have our flight list, we're going to head back over to our app.js. All right, so head over to our app.js. And we already have a search form on there. So now what we're going to do is import the flight list. So import flight list from, again, it's under the components. And we'll have a flight list. Okay. So that's a flight list. All right. So now we can start to update our app here. What we'll do is right before handle search, we'll come down here. We'll say constant flights. So that's going to be our collection, set flights. Okay. And use state. Initially, it's an empty array, empty collection. All right. And then what we'll do is we'll say constant uh, selected flight. Well, we'll leave that out for a second. What we'll do is we'll handle search, and then what we'll do is we'll just bring in the flight list here. So we'll say after search form, do a little condition here. We'll say flights dot length is greater than 0. That means the search result brought back a list of flights greater than 0. All right, one or more flights that met the condition, and we'll then, if the flight length is greater than 0, then we'll show the flight list. Okay, we'll display the list of or collection of flights. So flight list, notice that's a component we're putting in here. Flights equals flights. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and close this guy. All right. So we'll go ahead and save that. See a warning here. Config is assigned. All right, let's head over to our booking API real quick. I just want to make sure config. We created config. Oh, yeah. So we have to pass this for our book flight. We haven't used it yet, but we'll pass the config here. Okay, to the Axios. All right, that's our Axios configuration. We'll pass it here. That's fine. We'll save that. Okay, so once we handle the search, perform the search, if we get a collection of flights that are greater than 0, we go ahead and use our flight list component to display the flight. So remember earlier we handled search. Well, we need to use that data instead of logging the console. We can leave that in there. We could just add here set flights, right? So we need to make use of this use state and set the flights. And what we'll do is set it using the data. Remember, the data that comes back from our API on search is a collection of flights. So we'll go ahead and use set flights to set the state of flights. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's refresh our page. Okay. I will search for JFK, LAX, and March 20th. Search. All right, beautiful. I'm going to close this guy. And notice this is pretty nice. Again, we can adjust the styling, but important part is we search for flights. We get 2 flights that are going to from JFK to LAX on March 20th. Notice we printed out or displayed using HTML and React some details by looping through all the flights that come back. Right. So quick way to get a collection, loop through it, display it on the UI. All right, so we're able to search for flights using our search form. Then once the collection comes back from our .NET 6 Web API, we're able to display all the flights using our flight list component in React. Now it's finally time to set up our last component for the booking app, which is the booking form. All right, so I'm going to right-click the components, add a new file. We'll call that bookingform.js. All right, so again, start off with importing React, use state from React. All right, now we're going to also import the styles. So import styles, and then we'll have style.css. Okay. We're going to also make use of our booking API's method for book flight. Okay. So we already use search flights in our search form. Now we're going to use book flight in our booking form. All right, so we're going to import book flight method from services/booking API. All right, great. So let's create our booking form here. So go and export it, booking form, and we'll say empty, and then this guy, put a semicolon here. And then what we'll do is export it, right? So we'll export the default booking form. Okay. All right, so what's going to happen within our booking form? All right, so a few things here. We're going to add here a flight. This is a kind of the selected flight after the search result comes back. Okay. Now we're going to store the name, the email, and the phone number on our booking form. So we have constant name, set name, use state, and initially name is empty, and then constant email, set email equals use state, again empty here, and then finally the phone number, set phone number, use state, empty initially. Okay. Next, we need an event or method to handle booking. All right. So what we're going to do is say constant handle booking. Okay. Async. All right. And now let's define that. All right. So we'll say e.prevent default. Okay. And here we're going to use our API. So constant response equals await. And this is where we use our book flight. We pass our object. So be careful here. This is going to be an object, right? Our booking flight request. So flight number. It's a flight number. Okay. And then we have the name, email, and phone number. Okay. And that's what we need to pass into our book flight API. So if you head over to our booking API, you see it takes a book flight request. Okay. So that's what we need to do to pass our call our book flight method. Okay. And what we'll do here is just console.log the response data. Okay. All right. So we're able to handle booking. Let's start using it in some HTML, right? So what we're going to do is create a booking form. All right. So we're going to say return. Oh, I need to put a semicolon here. Handle booking. Okay. So return. And here, let's put a semicolon there. And then we're going to create a div again. This time we're going to give it class name that's defined in our style sheet. And this can be a container booking form. Okay. Right. And then we'll give it heading. We'll say book flight. Okay. Book flight. All right. Now we create a submit form. All right. So form on submit is where we're going to handle the booking. All right. So handle booking. Okay. That's where it calls our API. All right. Now within this form, we're going to have a bunch of labels. Name. And then it's going to have a label input type equals text. And I'll start copying and pasting some of these for the rest of the fields. Value equals the name. This is for the passenger's name. On change event. And then we're going to say E. And then we're going to set name. And e.target.value. That's the value inside the text box. Text input. Okay. And what I can do now is copy these two lines here. You can copy it two more times, right, for the email and the phone number. So go and paste it here. Paste one more time. So this is going to be the email. All right, and then this is text is going to be email here for the variable. On change, it's going to be set email. All right, and then finally we have phone number. Okay, it's going to be phone number variable. And set phone number. Okay, so we have our inputs and labels. Now we want to create a button, and then it'll be a submit button. Okay, and that button is going to read book flight. All right, so once the passenger searches flights, it's a list of flights back. We want to be able to book the flight. All right, so that's the end of our form. Okay, so everything looks good here. We got to make a few changes. We'll go ahead and save that. We got to make a few changes in our flight list. Okay, so if you head back over to the flight list, remember we had handle flight select, set selected flight, and we had a button here to book, but we didn't create any pointer to handle flight select. All right, so what we're going to do is the book button here, we're going to create on click event, right? And we will have a pointer to handle flight select. Okay, flight select, and pass it the selected flight. All right. That way, when during the booking, remember the booking needs a flight number from the selected flight that the passenger wants to book, right? So this is a slight change to our flight list component. All right. So one more thing we got to do is uh, put a condition. If there's a selected flight, okay, and if there's a selected flight, then we got to show the booking form, right? So booking form, that's our booking form component, okay? Flight equals selected flight. Okay. Once I close that, I don't need this, and I need to close this. All right, there we go. Now the booking form, we need that at the top. We need to import it, right? We don't have it here, so we're gonna import booking form from, and this is gonna be the booking form. It's right in the same level as component as the flight list. Okay, so we'll put a semicolon there. We'll go ahead and save this. All right, let's give it a shot. If we missed anything, we'll find out. Okay, so I'm gonna again search for the flight. Once I get it back, now I have a book button here, so I can click on book here. Once you click book, you should see now our new booking form. So I enter the details. Now, however, when I hit book flight, oh, I get an error. All right, so you'll notice that in our booking API, we passed certain headers here, right, to our .NET 6 Web API as part of the Axios config, application JSON content type header. Now, remember our CORS policy. If you go back to that error, it's throwing an error here. It says CORS error. Okay. Well, everything else works except for book. So it looks like we need to allow certain headers. All right. So if we head over to our .NET 6 Web API, I can stop that. Notice I have no headers set up here. So in our program CS, I'm going to say with origins, and after that, I'm going to say with headers. All right, with headers. Okay, and I'm going to say new string collection, and we'll allow the React to talk to our API and allow it to pass content type header. All right, so this is now how you can kind of fine tune or control or constrain the data that gets to your API, which is good. It's a good security policy. All right, so we'll say header names dot content type. Okay. All right, and again, we keep this allow any method here. All right, I'll just tab that here. Okay, I'll go ahead and save this. I'll restart my API. We'll wait for that to launch again. All right, and once the API comes up, the Swagger page, I'll head back over to the React app, click on book, and we get now a 200. All right, and let's see the response. All right, flight booked successfully. Very nice. Notice the book call. It's calling our local API, our .NET 6 API, booking controller book endpoint. It's passing a payload. Look at the payload. So notice it grabbed a hold of the selected flight, right? So we click the book button on the first tile here, or card, and it knows that this is a flight number because we set the state of that flight number, right? So it passes the flight number along with the email, the name, and phone number of the booking form along to the .NET 6 Web API, all right? So now you successfully created the booking app that calls two .NET 6 Web API endpoints. Now it's time to secure our both our React and our .NET 6 Web API using Auth0. All right, so we now have a working React app tied or integrated with our backend .NET 6 Web API. Now we need to authenticate and authorize or set up security for both our front-end React client and our back-end .NET 6 Web API. So I'm going to use Auth0. Again, there are plenty of identity providers out there, like Identity Server. There's Cognito, right? There's a lot of providers that allow you to authenticate, authorize, set up roles, permissions, users, claims, and so on. I really liked Auth0. I've used it in the past. It's very easy to set up and integrate with both C Sharp, .NET, as well as any sort of client-side single-page applications, for example, React. So what you're going to do is head over to auth0.com. If you don't have an account, you can just click on sign up. I'm going to go to login. Again, if you don't have an account, you can log in with your Microsoft account, continue with GitHub or Google or LinkedIn and so on. I'm going to use my Microsoft account. Okay. So once I log in, you'll be presented by a management dashboard. Okay. Kind of your development environment. Notice here it's a development dashboard. So there's no charge to this. Notice on the left side I have a little admin UI panel, and I'll be able to manage my applications. All right. So what we're going to do is once you sign up, we're going to set up two types of applications. All right. We're going to set up an API. All right. That's for our .NET 6 web API. All right. And then we're also going to set up a front-end single-page application for React for the login and logout, so that users, if they want to be able to use our booking system, they need to either log in via Auth0 using one of their external providers, or their username, password from Auth0, or like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or GitHub and so on, and then they'll be returned to our React app. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is click on APIs. Notice I have one here. So Booking App API, I'm going to click on Create API. Okay, and I'm going to give it a name. So we'll call it Airline Booking API. And this identifier field doesn't have to be your actual domain. It's just a unique identifier. Even though we don't have a public domain set up or URL set up for our API, local API. So here I'm going to type in HTTPS airline booking API .example.com. Okay, so airline booking API .example.com, and we'll hit create. All right, perfect. So it created our airline booking API. Okay, so that's our API has been set up on Auth0. Okay, if you go to settings, you'll notice that there's a unique ID for our API. This is the name of the API. This is our unique identifier. It has other settings like token expiration for your access token when they expire. You can again adjust those. And then the rest of it you don't really have to play with right now. Notice that this API hasn't been integrated with our .NET 6 web APIs yet. We'll go ahead and do that in the next set of videos. All right, you'll notice it's very simple. Auth0 allows me to create a new API, secure my API, and allow me to integrate it into my C# .NET 6 web API. All right, now that we have a server-side API set up or application set up on Auth0, I'm going to go ahead and create my front-end system. All right, so my front-end application on Auth0. So I'm going to go over to Applications. I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Application. All right, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to choose single page web application. This is for like React. You'll notice here. Again, Auth0 provides a lot of different application types, as you can see here, for iOS, Node server-side Node.js, ASP.NET. Again, you have shell scripts, machine-to-machine applications. All right. So here we're going to choose SPA or single page web applications. I'm going to give it a name. This is going to be my airline booking app. Okay. Airline booking app. Okay. And click on create. Okay, so now it created a client ID here. So let's go over to settings. You'll notice we have a domain here. Okay, this is our domain. This is our client ID and client secret. So do keep a note of this, right? You have your application logo. So when users log in or log out of your React app, you can actually upload a custom PNG image, and they'll see your company logo or your project logo. Okay, I'm going to leave it the default for now. Um, Again, the important part is the settings. So very simple. We set up a new client-side application on Auth0. I want to be now able to set up our important URLs. Okay. So for URLs, what I'm going to do is set up the allowed callback URL. Okay, and also the logout URL. All right, as well as allowed web origins. All right, so make sure to set these three up. All right, in our case, we're going to have our React app is running on port 3002. Okay, so the logout URL is also the React app, which is running on 3002. And then the allowed web origins, right, is also running on 2002. So it's basically the port and domain of your React app that's running on localhost and port 3002. Okay. Um, for now, that's the only set of settings you need. Okay. There's nothing else you need to do on this page, so you can click on Save Changes. All right, successfully saved. So now we have a client-side single-page application set up called the Airline Booking app. And then we also have our APIs, right, set up here. So I'll just open a new tab for you. So we have our application, Airline Booking API. Okay. So we have our API here for our .NET 6 Web API, and then also our single-page React application set up on Auth0 under the Airline Booking app. Okay. I'll leave these two open. And now we'll start to integrate our .NET 6 Web API and as well as our React with Auth0. All right, so now that we have set up our Auth0 API, right? That's the airline booking API. We're going to integrate .NET 6 Web API and C# with Auth0. Very simple. Let me show you how that works. So we're going to head over to our API and secure our API. So let's see how to do that. We're going to open up Program CS. All right. First thing to do is add a few changes to, or one change to our policy, our course policy. All right. So notice earlier we added a header to allow our React app to send a content type. Now we're going to add one more flavor. We're going to say header names, and the React app needs to send an authorization header. So, for example, a bearer token or any other authorization header. All right. So once that's set up, I'm going to save our program. Okay. The next change is adding authentication. All right. So what I'm going to do is before the app.build, okay, after our dependency injection, I'm going to say builder.services.add authentication. Okay. All right. Now, within this authentication, we're going to add some options and integrate Auth0. Okay. So here, it's going to hit semicolon. All right. So first thing is we're going to say options.default authentication scheme equals JWT bearer defaults. Okay. You're going to need a library for this, and I'll show you where that is. Authentication scheme. Okay. Notice it's throwing an error. I need to import or install package Microsoft ASP.NET Core Authentication JWT bearer. Find and install latest version. Okay. Let me go ahead and that failed. Let me right-click the API dependencies and manage NuGet packages real quick. And we will go to browse. Oh, okay. It's because we're using .NET 6, so we're having a different version of that package. So if I go to authentication bearer, we're going to use a 6.0.28. So what I can do is search for Microsoft .ASP.NET Core, okay, authentication. And you will see, give it a second here. Yeah, JWT bearer. Okay. So here I'm not going to use the latest stable, but I'm going to use for .NET 6. I'm going to use the last version of 6.0.28. Okay, and I'm going to install that and apply. I accept. Okay, if I head over to program, now if I hover over JWT Bear defaults, I should be able to bring in the import using statement. Sorry. Okay. So once that option is set for the default authenticate scheme, I'm going to set one more options here, and it's going to be the default challenge scheme. And again, using the JWT Bear defaults dot authentication scheme. Okay. All right. We're going to add one more chain to this add authentication, and we're going to add the add JWT bearer. Okay, this is where we use our auth0 options here. So I'm going to say options dot authority. All right, now the authority is equal to, I'm going to put empty string for now. I'll show you where to get all this. And then options dot audience equals empty string. All right. So if you head back over to the API you created on the airline booking API in auth0, under settings, you're going to see the under the applications, right? Go to the client app, which is on the side. I think we already had it here. I'm sorry. So airline booking API. If I head over to applications, and this is our client side React single page settings. All right, I'm going to copy the domain here. All right, so this is our authority, the domain here. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. Okay, head back over to the authority and paste that domain in. Okay, all right. Now for the audience, and by the way, the nice part is on the quick start. Oh, quick start. Sorry, on the API quick start. You can actually see that here. So you can actually take this and copy it directly on the quick start, which is nice. Auth0 gives you that generated code. So I'll head over here, just copy and paste this in. Okay. And notice that's our unique identifier, airline booking API example.com, and authority is set up to this domain, and that's the audience. Okay. So once you set that up, we need to do one more thing. So after we build our container, okay, so we have use authorization here. So just before this, I'm going to say app.use authentication. Okay, now we've set up our .NET 6 Web API to integrate with auth0. It's as simple as that. Okay, now we need to secure our booking controller. Okay, so if you head over to the booking controller, what I can do is I want the general public to be able to search. So I don't want any restriction or authentication on the search endpoint, but on book, I want to be able to protect the book flight or book route. Okay, so here I can just add a tag, authorize. Okay, now this is secure. All right, the book flight is secure. So if I was to run the API again, okay, if I was to run the API, once the Swagger page comes up, I'll show you what the difference is now. All right. So I'll wait for the API Swagger page to launch. There we go. All right. So anyone can come in and search for flights, right? So again, we can type in JFK, LAX, choose a date, 0320. I get a list of flights back. All right. Perfect. That works. Now let's go ahead and try the booking endpoint. All right. So I'm going to take one of the flight numbers here. Try out the booking endpoint. So I'll punch in the flight number here, put in my name, any email you want, test.com, and phone number 12345678990. And I'm going to click on execute. Let's see what takes place. Okay. All right. This is what we wanted. Notice instead of allowing me to book, it's throwing a 401 unauthorized exception. Okay. So this is the HTTP status code 401, means unauthorized. So notice we've protected our API using .NET 6 pipeline for authentication and auth0. Okay. Now, if somebody wants to use this endpoint, they would need to generate a token from auth0 pass it to the API, right? And the access token, and add a header for authorization. I'm going to show you how that works. So that's all it takes to protect your .NET 6 Web API using Auth0. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the API for now. And in the next video, we'll integrate our React app for the same. All right, so now that we've secured our .NET 6 Web API, it's time to secure our React app for a login, logout, and as well as being able to call the booking API endpoint, which now returns a 401 unauthorized. So if you head over to your applications page on Auth0, single page application we created for airline booking app. Okay, I think that was the one we created. Yeah, airline booking app. And what you'll notice is under Quick Start, we can choose the technology here for our web app. So in this case, we're using React. Okay, so if you scroll down, you're going to see a command here. We need to install this package using npm. Okay, so if I head over to my terminal on my React app, I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. So install auth0 React, hit enter. Okay, so that should install the auth0 libraries, and then we'll be able to use it to secure our React app. All right, so that's finished. Now, if you head over to your app, your index.js, okay. So notice here we have to import. It's not secure yet. Our root is not. Our React app is not secure. Okay, using Auth0. So this is where we're going to set up and secure our React app. Okay. So first thing is if you head over to before app, I'm going to actually import the Auth0 provider. Okay, so Auth0 provider, and that's coming from the library we just installed, which is Auth0 slash Auth0 React. Okay, great. And if you now change this slightly, the render, right? So instead of render React strict mode, what we're going to do is remove this. Okay, remove this. And here inside render, we're going to say Auth0 provider. Okay, and here we're going to just close it. Oops. Zero provider, and give it a domain. Sorry, domain. You'll actually be able to head over to your quick start and add this in. So notice here, I can copy this over. So pretty much the whole thing here, I can just say root render and copy this. Head over to my React app and just paste that in. Okay. So this will set your domain, your client ID for your single page app. Okay. And now we want to set our audience as well. All right. So there's one thing missing here. We want to set the audience. Okay. And this audience is going to be a URL. All right. So remember the audience we used inside of our .NET 6 Web API. So that was this guy. So we're going to copy this airline booking app or airline booking API.example.com. So I'll head over to my React and punch that in. Okay, great. I'm going to save this. Okay. So now we've set up our index.js to integrate with Auth0. All right. So again, these can be stored, and I'll show you in a later video how to organize your keys, your client IDs into environment variables. So right now this is a domain and client ID that's set up, and then we have the redirect URI, so it means that once our users log in with Auth0, they're going to be redirected back to our React app. Okay? Window, location, origin. Okay. All right. Okay. So next, we're going to set up a login and logout button for our React app. So if I head over to components, we have nothing under the buttons folder, right? So first thing we're going to do is add two buttons. All right. The first one is going to be a login button. So I'll right-click button folder, new file. This can be the login button.js. Okay. And we'll create another file here, and we'll call it the logout button.js. Okay. So under login button, this is where we make use of our Auth0 library we imported. So we're going to say import React from React. Okay. and then import, and this is where we use auth0. So use auth0 from, and this is going to be auth at auth0 react. Okay. All right. So now we create a constant login button, and we're gonna, it's not going to be passed any argument. So we're going to say constant login with redirect. Okay. And here we're going to use, instead of set use state, we're going to say use auth0. Okay. All right. And all we're going to do is return a button. And on click, we're going to have it log in with redirect. Okay, that's part of the auth0 library, right? And we'll go ahead and close this and say login and close the button. Okay, perfect. So we'll save that. That's our login button. Okay. Next, we're going to create the logout button. All right. So again, you can copy everything from, well, the import statements from the login button over to the logout button. Okay. And we'll say constant logout button. Again, very similar to the login button. And we're going to have a constant logout equals use auth0. And we're going to return a button on click. And here we're going to point to the logout of auth0. Okay. And we're going to give it logout params. And this is going to be return to, and then here it's going to return to the back to React. Okay, window.location.origin. So it's going to head over to React auth0 logout and come back to our React app, right? Let's make sure we have the right number of. Okay, that looks good. Okay, there we go. There's a button, and then here we'll just say logout. Okay, and I need a semicolon here and a semicolon here. Okay, am I missing the export on the login button? Yes, I am. So let's go ahead and semicolon this, export default login button. Okay, save that. And on the logout button, same thing. I'm going to export default logout button. Okay, and I'm going to save that. So now we have our login and logout buttons. Fairly easy to use now. So if I head over to app.js, okay, over here I can say now import login button from, again, this is under my components, buttons this time, and this can be the login button. Okay, we'll also import the logout button from .components buttons logout button. Okay, and now how do we use these? All right, so very simple. All right, we have a search form, maybe just above it. Again, you can handle this on different pages, and we'll probably refactor our app to do that later. For now, I'm going to bring in the login button. Very simple. Okay, and then also a logout button right next to it. Oops, log out button. Okay, great. I'm going to save this. All right, so we'll go ahead and start our application again, npm start. All right, so what's nice is once I reload my React app, I have a login logout button. Now, once I log in, so I'll click login. Notice it takes me to auth0. All right, and remember we can set a custom logo here in auth0 for our client-side login, so our users can log in and see your company logo. Here I'm going to again log in, or maybe even sign up here. I have an email address I'm going to log in with, so I set one up already. So this is I'm just like a third-party user trying to book flights, right? So I'm going to log in here. I think that's my password. Yeah, perfect. So it's saying authorize the app, right? So Airline Booking app is requesting access to your account. So I'm going to click on accept. All right, now I'm logged in. Oh, it seems like nothing took place. We'll add a profile page in a second here. But notice that I'm authenticated into my airline booking app. All right. I can click on log out. All right. Now it's logged me out. I can log back in. Again, this is a simple login, logout using Auth0. Notice we didn't have to develop any custom login, logout functionality ourselves. We just had to integrate and use Auth0's library, which is pretty cool and easy to set up. So again, I'm gonna yeah. So that's the logout, all right, and login. Okay, so I'll head back to our airline booking app. Okay, next we're going to add a profile page so that once a user logs in, it shows them some details about their Auth0 account or their user credential details. Not credential, but user profile details. All right, so under pages, we have no pages here. I'm going to right-click pages, add a new file here. We're going to call this the profile page.javascript. Okay. Here, again, we're going to import React from React. We're going to import, again, Auth0 here. Use Auth0 from, again, this is at Auth0, React, perfect. All right, so now constant profile equals, all right, so I'm going to say constant user. Now, these are all part of the Auth0 library, so is authenticated, is loading. Use Auth0. Okay. So here we're going to do a check if is loading, and we'll just say return div, oops, div. This, okay. So loading, and we'll just say loading here. Okay. And then we're going to return is authenticated. So is authenticated, and so if the user is authenticated, meaning they hit login, they come back, right? What we're going to do is maybe display the picture, user's picture, profile picture, their name, and email. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll say create a div here. All right, create an image, source equals, and this is where we take advantage of the Auth0 user. So dot picture. Okay, and then alt we'll have a user dot name. All right, and then we'll add a little heading here, h2, and then we'll display the user dot name. Okay, and then we'll also add a p paragraph, and then we'll show the user email. Again, feel free to change this around and style it, or place in different pages. That's up to you. Div. So I'm going to close this semicolon, this one, and then we're going to export default profile so we can use it. Okay, I'm going to save this. Now, if you head over to app.js, so remember we added login button, logout button. Right after the logout button, we're going to add the profile. So let's import that first. Sorry. So we're going to import that. So that's going to be from import profile from dot pages slash profile page. Okay. Here now, I can use profile and close that. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to save this. If I head back over to my React app, refresh, I'm going to click on login. I'm going to again log in with the user account on Auth0. So I'm going to enter my credentials. Oh, awesome. So once I'm logged in, notice I get some details about my user's profile. Okay. And what's cool about Auth0 is if you look at the activity, or if you go to, for example, user management, users, notice here it shows this user, public user, Manish Ryan, logged in 9 times just a few seconds ago. All right. So what's nice about Auth0 is they have a dashboard. It shows you, kind of active users. You can filter on the time here. How many total users? I have one set up right now. Signups, how many signups there were. All right. User retention, failed login. So this is great. You don't have to develop all this on your own in-house. That can be expensive. Um, so we've set up the login logout with Auth0. The last step is to pass an access token to our web API so that we can authenticate or authorize the booking endpoint. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that next. Okay, so let's go ahead and utilize the access bearer access token so that we can call our secure booking endpoint, right? So I'm going to head over to the services booking API, right? And here I'm going to add one more header to our book flight headers, right? In the Axios config. So here I'm going to say authorization, and this is going to be bearer, so bearer token, okay, and $ and access token. Okay, so where's the access token coming from? We're going to actually pass it into our book flight request. Okay, so access token, perfect. All right. So again, that's sent as part of the config. Now, since we updated the book flight method here in our API, we need to go back to the booking form. Okay, and the book flight here. So on the booking form, we need to be able to pass a token. Now, how do we pass a token? This is where Auth0 comes into play, the libraries we used before. So what I'm going to do is import, use Auth0, which is nice, right? They have this ready-made library for React from Auth0, React. Okay. So now, right under our before handle booking, I'm going to create a constant, and we're going to say there's a method inbuilt into Auth0 called get access token silently. Okay, and this is using Auth0. Okay, so what we do now is before we call the book flight, we're going to get a hold of that access token, right? So say constant access token equals await get access token silently, and then here, this is where we need some our audience. All right, so this is where we set our audience. So we're going to say authorization params. Okay, and here it's going to be audience, and this is where we use our audience URL. Okay, and again, this is going to be the audience we set in our app.js. I think we have it. Sorry, in our index. Yeah, booking audience is this guy. Okay, so we can grab it from our index.js. So I'm going to grab the airline booking API example.com. That's our audience, right? I'm going to head over to the booking form and paste it into the audience here. So now we'll be able to get our access token silently using the Auth0 library, right? And then what we're going to do is pass it to our book flight method. So after the book flight request, we're going to pass in the access token. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and try to run this. Okay, so let's head over to our React app, launch it if it's not already launched. Make sure your .NET 6 Web API is running. I'm going to first log in. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to log in using Auth0. So I'm going to enter my credentials. All right, once I'm logged in, it's going to redirect me back to React.js. All right, I'm going to now be able to search flights, JFK to LAX. I want to book it for March 20th. Okay, search. So I have 2 available flights. Now I want to book the first flight. Enter my name. So remember, before the book endpoint is secure, it was throwing a 401. Now we're going to be passing a bearer access token. So let's give it a try and enter my phone number. Okay, now before you hit book, let's open the developer tools. Okay, let's scroll down, hit book. All right, now I get a 200. Flight booked successfully. Notice we've secured our front-end React app with login, logout, showing the profile details of our user that's logged in. We have complete stats on the Auth0 dashboard, complete user activity. All right, and also we're able to talk to our backend .NET 6 Web API that has a secure booking endpoint. We're able to pass an access token via the authorization header from our React app, and we successfully end-to-end set up a front-end application, talk to a web API in .NET 6, and both of these applications are secure using Auth0.